Rosberg and Wolff just exposed the one Hamilton truth Mercedes has no answer for. Because this is not just about a Ferrari win. It is about the man Mercedes thought it understood better than anyone, taking everything he learned across 12 seasons in silver and using it against the team that made him a legend. Rosberg knows what it takes to break Hamilton in a title fight. Wolff knows how dangerous Hamilton becomes when he smells weakness. And now, after Hamilton won in a Ferrari that still has a known power deficit, Mercedes is facing the question it cannot escape. How did Hamilton beat the W17 before Ferrari even fixed its biggest problem? That is what makes this so uncomfortable. Mercedes still has the energy advantage. It still has the traction. It still has the straight line speed. But Hamilton just proved that the W17 is not invincible. It is dependent. Dependent on the right track, the right deployment, the right aero timing, and the race giving Mercedes enough room to use its biggest weapon. And if Hamilton has already found a way to take that weapon away, then Rosberg and Wolff may have revealed something far worse than a weakness. They may have revealed that Mercedes is fighting the one driver who knows exactly how to make them doubt themselves. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this story feels so dangerous for Mercedes, you have to understand what Rosberg and Wolff represent in Hamilton's career. They are not random voices around the paddock. They are two people connected to the most uncomfortable parts of Hamilton's greatness. Rosberg is the reminder that Hamilton can be beaten, but only when the pressure becomes personal, precise, and relentless. He knows what it takes to live inside the same garage, study the same data, face the same expectations, and still find a way to make Hamilton uncomfortable. He understands the kind of mental fight most drivers never survive. Wolff is different. Wolff is the man who saw Hamilton at his highest level inside Mercedes. He saw the calm before the attack, the frustration after a missed opportunity, the way Hamilton can turn one small weakness into a full weekend of pressure. He saw how Hamilton thinks when he believes the car beneath him can answer back. And that is why Hamilton's Ferrari win hits Mercedes in a place the timing sheets cannot show. Because this was not just Hamilton winning again. This was Hamilton winning against the team that knows him best. That should have been Mercedes' advantage. They know his habits. They know his standards. They know how he speaks when he is confident, and how he pushes when he feels the project has more to give. They spent 12 seasons learning the details of Lewis Hamilton. But now, that knowledge cuts both ways. Hamilton also knows them. He knows how Mercedes builds a car. He knows how Wolff protects a team when the outside pressure rises. He knows how the garage feels when the car is genuinely dominant, and how it feels when a rival starts asking the right questions. That is what makes this fight so different from a normal Ferrari versus Mercedes battle. It is not only red against silver. It is memory against memory. Mercedes remembers the Hamilton who won for them. Hamilton remembers the Mercedes that taught him how dominance works. And now both sides are using that history as a weapon. For the opening races, Mercedes looked like it had the safer weapon. The W17 had the strongest pattern in the field. It gained where it mattered most. It came alive on corner exits. It used its energy better on the straights. It kept pulling when other cars began to fade. And when a car can do that, it does not only create speed. It creates helplessness. That is the feeling Ferrari had to fight. Hamilton could drive a strong corner, place the car beautifully, and still lose the chance to attack once the Mercedes reached the straight. That is one of the most frustrating experiences a driver can have, because it makes talent feel trapped. The driver can do almost everything right, and still watch the rival escape. That is why Hamilton's win changed the emotional balance. It proved he was not trapped everywhere. It proved Ferrari's car had enough strength in the right conditions to take the W17 away from its comfort zone. And once that happened, Mercedes could no longer hide behind the idea that their advantage was absolute. This is where Rosberg's presence in the story matters. Rosberg knows that Hamilton becomes most dangerous when people believe he is cornered. That is when he studies harder. That is when he sharpens the smallest details. That is when he stops treating a weakness like an excuse and starts treating it like a target. Mercedes gave Hamilton a target. The W17's strength is clear now. Energy deployment. Traction. Straight line efficiency. The way the car keeps delivering power when Ferrari begins to run out of response. But when a strength becomes clear, the edges of that strength become clear too. Hamilton does not need Ferrari to copy Mercedes overnight. That is not realistic. He does not need Ferrari to become the best car on every circuit immediately. He needs Ferrari to understand where Mercedes can be hurt, then build weekends around those moments. That is exactly what Barcelona suggested. Ferrari still had a known power deficit. Hamilton had already admitted that long straights would remain painful. Mercedes still had the technical weapon that had shaped the early season. And yet, Hamilton won. That one result creates a problem Wolff cannot talk away. Because if Ferrari can win before solving the biggest weakness, then Mercedes has to fear what happens when Ferrari solves even a small part of it. A little cleaner deployment. A little better straight-line survival. A little more confidence in the corners. A little sharper tire protection when following. In Formula 1, small things do not stay small when Hamilton is the driver using them. That is the part Mercedes understands too well. They watched him turn tiny margins into victories for years. They watched him win races that looked out of reach. They watched him absorb pressure, stretch tire life, manage gaps, and punish rivals the moment they hesitated. That was once Mercedes' comfort. Now it is their threat. And that is why the phrase, "Mercedes has no answer," is not about one missing upgrade or one bad setup choice. It is about the psychological problem Hamilton creates. If Mercedes beats him, people say the W17 is simply too strong. But if Hamilton beats Mercedes, people ask what he has discovered. That question is dangerous, because it pulls attention toward the car. It makes every advantage look less mysterious. It turns every Mercedes strength into something Ferrari can study. It changes the mood from admiration to investigation. And Wolff knows how quickly that can spread. One Ferrari win becomes a theory. One theory becomes a development direction. One development direction becomes a threat across several races. That is how a championship that looked controlled starts to tighten. Not because the leader suddenly collapses. Because the rival finally stops guessing. Hamilton's win gave Ferrari something more valuable than celebration. It gave them a map. And the hardest part for Mercedes is that the map may have been drawn by the same man who once helped them build the fortress they are now trying to defend. The next layer is where Mercedes' problem becomes more uncomfortable, because Hamilton's win did not only expose the car. It exposed the way Mercedes now has to explain the car. Before Hamilton won, the story was simple enough for Wolff to control. Mercedes had built the strongest package under the new rules. The W17 had the best energy behavior, the cleanest straight-line weapon, and the kind of acceleration out of corners that made every rival's weakness look bigger. That is a powerful story. And powerful stories protect teams. They make the garage feel calm. They make rivals feel impatient. They make the championship leader look inevitable, even when the season is still young. But Hamilton's Ferrari win damaged that protection. Now, every Mercedes strength has a question attached to it. The W17 still has energy deployment, but what happens when Hamilton keeps the Ferrari close enough before the straight? The car still has traction, but what happens when the circuit rewards Ferrari's cornering strength more than Mercedes' exit punch? Mercedes still has speed, but what happens when the race becomes messy, and the car cannot simply disappear into clean air? That is the problem Wolff cannot answer with confidence alone. Because confidence works when the stopwatch supports it. Barcelona made the stopwatch say something different. It said Hamilton could win in red. It said Ferrari could beat Mercedes without completely erasing its known weakness. And it said the W17, for all its brilliance, can be pulled away from the conditions that make it look untouchable. That is where Rosberg's shadow becomes important. Rosberg knows better than almost anyone that Hamilton does not need everything to be perfect before he becomes dangerous. He needs a weakness. A small one. A repeated one. Something he can return to lap after lap, session after session, until the pressure moves from the car into the mind of the opponent. That was the nature of their greatest rivalry. It was not only speed. It was pressure, routine, detail, mental exhaustion. The knowledge that one mistake could become the opening Hamilton needed, or the opening Hamilton could be denied. Rosberg understands that side of Hamilton because he lived it. And Wolff understands it because he had to manage it. That is why Mercedes knows exactly how serious this can become. A normal rival sees the W17 and thinks, how do we copy that speed? Hamilton sees it and asks a colder question. Where does that speed stop protecting them? That question changes everything. Because Ferrari does not need to beat Mercedes in every phase of the lap to make the championship dangerous. Ferrari needs to identify the few phases where Hamilton can survive the Mercedes advantage, then turn those phases into pressure points. Barcelona gave them the first proof. It showed that Ferrari's cornering foundation is not just a consolation prize. It can become a weapon when the track denies Mercedes enough space to exploit its straight line and energy strength fully. That means Ferrari does not have to chase the whole W17 at once. It can chase the moments that matter. This is how dominant cars become vulnerable. Not by suddenly losing speed. By losing control of where the fight happens. Mercedes wants the fight to happen at corner exit, through the energy release, and down the straight. That is where the W17 hurts people. That is where Hamilton had already felt the Ferrari fade. That is where even overtake mode was not enough to stop Mercedes from pulling away. Ferrari wants the fight to happen earlier. In the corner. In the technical rhythm. In the sections where Hamilton can carry speed, protect the tires, and stay close enough that Mercedes does not get a clean escape. That is the battle underneath the battle. And once a driver like Hamilton understands that, the whole race becomes a trap he is trying to set. He may not attack immediately. He may not show everything in the first stint. He may spend laps learning where the Mercedes is comfortable and where it is not. Then, when the race shifts, when tires drop, when traffic appears, when strategy creates a narrow window, he attacks the one place where the W17's advantage is smaller than expected. Mercedes knows this version of Hamilton. They helped create it. That is why this is not just about Ferrari momentum. It is about Mercedes facing a driver who carries their own lessons back toward them. For Wolff, that creates a unique pressure. He cannot treat Hamilton like an emotional outsider. He cannot assume Hamilton is guessing. He cannot reduce the threat to Ferrari hype. Hamilton knows what a championship car feels like. He knows what a Mercedes advantage feels like. And he knows the difference between a weakness that can be ignored and a weakness that can be hunted. That is what makes the W17 situation so delicate. The car is still strong. It may still be the best overall package. But its advantage has now been described publicly in a way that gives rivals direction. Energy deployment. Less fade at the end of the straights. Strong traction. A connected system that works best when the track allows it to breathe. Those words matter. Because in Formula One, language can become a weapon. Once a weakness has a name, everyone can look for it. The engineers look for it in the data. The drivers look for it in the mirrors. The strategists look for it in the race shape. The commentators look for it every time a Ferrari exits a corner behind a Mercedes and the gap either grows or does not. That is how pressure multiplies. And Mercedes now has to live with that pressure while protecting a car that depends on precision. The W17 is not a blunt instrument. It is not simply a car with a giant power advantage that can crush every circuit. Its strength is more refined than that. It depends on timing between the aero modes and the energy system. It depends on laying down power cleanly. It depends on having enough straight to make the energy advantage count. That is why Hamilton's win mattered so much. It showed that if the track, setup, and race rhythm reduce the value of that advantage, Mercedes suddenly has to fight like everyone else. And when Mercedes has to fight like everyone else, Hamilton becomes even more dangerous. Because he is one of the best drivers in the world at turning discomfort into opportunity. He does not need the opponent to collapse. He needs the opponent to start managing risk. Once Mercedes starts managing risk instead of imposing pace, Ferrari has a way in. A slightly safer deployment map. A slightly earlier defensive strategy. A slightly more conservative setup. A slightly nervous reaction when Hamilton's Ferrari stays close for longer than expected. These things sound small. But championships are built from small things that repeat. Rosberg knows that. Wolff knows that. Hamilton knows it better than anyone. That is why Mercedes has no clean answer. If they push harder, they risk exposing the complexity of the W17. If they protect the car, they risk softening the edge that makes it so powerful. If they dismiss Hamilton's win, Ferrari grows more confident. If they react too strongly, they admit the threat is real. Every option carries a cost. That is the box Hamilton has started to build around Mercedes. And the most dangerous part is that he did it with a Ferrari that is still not complete. Hamilton has already made clear that Ferrari's power weakness remains. Long straights will still hurt. Mercedes will still have tracks where the W17 looks brutal again. But that honesty makes the situation worse for Wolff, not better.